I want to talk about The Last Dance episodes 7 and 8. Everybody seemed to agree that those were the two best episodes of the entire series. And I agree, especially after finishing the entire series. I think 7 and 8 had the most humanity. These were the two second to last episodes. And I learned the most when I watched The Last Dance episodes 7 and 8. You know, I'm 23 years old. I was not alive during the Jordan era. And so some of the stuff we were watching during The Last Dance was completely new information to me. I was learning it as new stuff. You know, I did not know. I don't know how I didn't know, but I'll be very honest. I did not know that Michael Jordan's dad was murdered. Like, I mean, what? I never knew that. People often refer to Michael Jordan's year off from basketball. People say, Michael Jordan left basketball. He took a year off to go play baseball. And usually they refer to it in the negative sense, like they're comparing LeBron James and Michael Jordan, and they'll say, well, Michael never had, LeBron's never had to take a year off. Michael had to take that year off and go play baseball. It's like, first of all, I hate the GOAT debate. I think it's very, very silly. Who's the greatest player of all time? I don't know. They're different players from different eras. Some people get really hung up on it. I just don't honestly care. I feel no need to compare. I like both players. I love LeBron. I love Michael Jordan. But man, I never realized that part of why Michael Jordan quit basketball for a year to play baseball was because his dad died. That's like a thing nobody ever seems to mention. People really kind of shame Michael Jordan for that year off. And it's not like Michael Jordan's dad just died. His dad was murdered. Like, why does everyone skip over that? It seems like a big detail to just leave out. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only person who didn't know that. I probably am. Honestly, I'm probably like some idiot that goes, "Oh, everyone else knew that." Well, I'm sorry, but for me, I didn't know that. And every time when I grew up listening to sports radio, I loved sports radio when I was a kid, and nobody ever mentioned that. It was never like an asterisk. It was never something people mentioned. People shamed Michael Jordan for that year off. No one mentioned, oh, he's soul searching because his dad was murdered. It's a big deal. You know, when my brother died 4 years ago, I understand what it's like to lose someone you care about. And it's just crazy that Michael Jordan's dad's death isn't mentioned more, especially the way he died. I mean, if my dad was murdered, I'd be a mess. Now, it's also funny, or I guess interesting. Michael Jordan was not the best baseball player, but he was solid. He was a solid baseball player, and his career was actually kind of gaining steam. You know, people talk about Michael Jordan, oh, he sucked, but double-A baseball, yada, yada. No, he was batting .202. He was kind of headed in a good direction as a baseball player, and then a MLB player strike happened. That really kind of cut Michael Jordan's baseball career short, was that baseball wasn't taking place. He wasn't going to play because the players were on strike, and that kind of pushed him back toward basketball. It just seems like those are two things forgotten in history. Michael Jordan's dad, the fact that Michael Jordan's baseball career really wasn't actually going that badly. It was actually gaining some steam. Now, 7 and 8, episode 7 and 8 of The Last Dance did confirm something that the previous episodes kind of hinted at, which is that Jordan was hard to work with and hard to be with, really to play with. Part of why that year off was because of his dad died. It was also partly because he really kind of burned out. And I understand that. He was so intense for so long. And I think the flame kind of died a little bit. That's what he even says. You know, it was so interesting hearing Michael's former teammates talk about MJ. They're like, yeah, there was fear of MJ. He was tough. He was kind of a jerk. And they talk about how as time went on, they all began to appreciate him. But I think in the moment when you're playing with MJ, I don't know that he was a fun, really great guy to play with. I don't think that. I think people are much softer when they reflect on things. But Jordan was hard on his teammates, man. He had the highest standards really of any player ever. And, you know, he tried to push them to get better. It's funny, from Michael Jordan's perspective, it had to be, exhausting to both try to live up to the expectations that are on you. As you're Michael Jordan, you're the aura around you, you're this big, larger-than-life figure. And you're also not only trying to manage that and live up to expectations, you're also trying to push everybody around you to be better and win a championship. Being Michael Jordan, whatever that means, is not easy. Doing that, being who he was late in the 90s, or the entire 90s, I just think, man, it's such a hard task to do. And it makes sense. Like, everyone kind of needed a year off. Michael needed a year off. The Bulls needed a year off, from basketball. From Jordan needed to get away from basketball and the pressure. I think the Bulls needed a break from Michael Jordan. That year off for his teammates, for him, for the coaching staff, everybody was what everybody needed in that situation. But let's be very, very clear. I don't want to make this get confused either. I'm saying, like, it was hard to be around Michael. Yes, it was. I think the year off was what they needed. But in the end, the Bulls wanted him back. B.J. Armstrong half recruited him by, challenging him in a gym and saying, oh, let's play one-on-one. I can beat you. You haven't played basketball in a while. And, it kind of got Jordan back on the court. And it's funny, like, him being challenged to, like, are you good enough still? And then that bringing him back to basketball is the most Michael Jordan thing I've ever heard. Of course, like, him getting challenged and having smack talk and getting slighted a little bit is the thing that pushed him back to the game. I think it also is pretty interesting. He fed off all those little slights, all those little tiny digs at him. He would tell himself stories and construct reasons to play hard and motivate himself. And really, it's how I think he kept going after having initial success. I think a lot of people, when you have success or find a way to make it in whatever field or whatever thing you are, like, I think I'm a fairly successful podcaster, not the most successful. I'm not saying that at all. But hey, I've made it. It's my full-time job. We have some steam rolling. It's going okay. And when you do that, you have to find another way to motivate yourself. And I think all the greats, Tom Brady, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, all have a similar thing where they find little things to motivate themselves, especially the slights. Every little thing. Oh, you said what? You said this? Like, they find reasons to go out every night or every game or whatever it is and put on a show. And especially in the offseason, guys like Tom Brady, I know Tom Brady sits at home going, oh, you think I'm old? I'll prove it to you. And I just think it's fascinating and pretty cool that guys like him, like Jordan, like Brady, really, really find ways to motivate themselves. There's that story where the Sonics head coach, George Karl, apparently didn't say hi to Michael Jordan at dinner. And honestly, I feel kind of bad for George Karl because the thing is, you couldn't win. Any interaction with Michael Jordan was a total loss where no matter what you did or what you said, he would find a way to use it for motivation. You could be like, hey, Mike, how you doing? Your dinner looks great. He's like, he said my dinner looks great. I'm going to kill him on the basketball court. It's like, oh, George Karl didn't say hi to him. I think that's maybe the safest thing. Because if you do say hi to him, he'll be like, oh, man, George Karl was very friendly last night. He thinks we're friends. No matter what you do to Michael Jordan, if you talk to him or interacted with him at all, the minute George Karl looked across the restaurant and saw Michael Jordan, he went, crap. Can I sneak out the back? Has Michael seen me yet? Is there a way? Because if I talk to him, if I even look at him the wrong way, it's going to motivate him. He's going to kick our butts on the basketball court. I don't know. I just think it's interesting. Like that's my main takeaway. Any interaction with Michael Jordan was a loss at all. Now, I loved a few things in this episode. One of the lines in this episode, one of Jordan's teammates said, he was looking kind of reflecting and looking off in the distance, and he goes, was Jordan nice? Was Jordan nice? He couldn't have been nice. He could not have been nice. He was hard to be around if you didn't love basketball, is another line I love. If you didn't love basketball, it was hard to be around Michael Jordan. He pushed everybody around him. And Jordan saw his role to be the guy to push people around him to be better, even if they didn't want to. Here's a few quotes from Michael Jordan from episode 7 and 8 of The Last Dance. He said, winning has a price, and leadership has a price. I pushed people who didn't want to be pushed. That's not a guy that's the most fun to be around. I'm not saying this here. It's not here or there. It sounds like actually somewhat good leadership to a degree where, man, you're getting the most out of your players. I don't know if it's good camaraderie, but it's definitely like, hey, I'm going to get the most out of B.J. Armstrong or the most out of this guy or that guy. And then Michael Jordan said, ask my old teammates. I never asked them to do something I didn't do myself. I love that. It really is cool. That is leadership in a nutshell. I'm not going to, when I was playing quarterback in high school, I couldn't yell at guys for missing workouts if I'm also missing workouts. You have to hold yourself to the same standard you hold everybody else to. I thought episode 7 and 8 really highlighted genius formula that we saw throughout the series in The Last Dance, where you're intercutting between stories from the past and also stories from the 98 Last Dance season. And, the history and the past moments are being shown, how the earlier years that led up to the events of the Last Dance year kind of created the future, created that time, and it really added to the epicness and the epicness. Is epicness a word? I don't know. It added to the importance. When you're hearing, oh, this thing happened in 1993, that's how it led up to the finals in 98. All these little moments, I think it's just really cool, and I really want to give kudos to the people who made the show. I just think that The Last Dance is really well made. It's a great story, good storytelling. And I want to end with this because there's a moment in episode 7 and 8, I think it's episode 8, where it is episode 8. Gary Payton, who played for the Seattle Sonics, was talking about losing the NBA Finals to the Chicago Bulls. And he said, he should have guarded Michael Jordan for the whole series. And his coach did not want that. He didn't want Gary Payton guarding Michael Jordan because he wanted Gary Payton to save his energy and save his strength to have, enough energy on the offensive side of the ball. Don't guard Michael Jordan. It's going to wear you out. We want you on offense. And that year, Gary Payton had just won the NBA's Defensive Player of the Year. Like, he was a really good defender. And Gary Payton goes, if I had guarded Michael Jordan, then maybe the outcome of the series would have been different if I'd guarded him the entire series. Remember, Gary Payton didn't guard Michael Jordan until Game 4 when the Sonics were already down 0-3. And it's really funny. In present day, Michael Jordan's watching on an iPad. They're playing it. They're playing Gary Payton's message about that, and Michael Jordan just laughs. Michael Jordan goes, "Ha! No way!" And to me, what stands out from that little interaction where Gary Payton's trying to, figure out how could it have gone differently, Michael Jordan can't even believe a reality, is that when we reflect on the past, we so often like to tell ourselves stories that help limit us from pain. We make ourselves out to be the hero of whatever story, whatever past happened. Gary Payton finds it easier to blame his coach. His coach should have let him guard Michael Jordan for the first 3 games of the series. It's easier to blame the coach than it is to admit, like, maybe I wasn't good enough to beat Michael Jordan. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have Michael Jordan going, he can't even imagine a reality where Gary Payton beats him. And I get it. That's how Michael Jordan becomes Michael Jordan. But it's so fascinating to me that when we reflect on the pasts, when we reflect on our pasts, we all tell ourselves the story we want to hear, whatever makes us feel good about ourselves. And I do it too. When I reflect on college football sometimes, I blame my coaches rather than admitting, like, hey, maybe I wasn't good enough. Inside, I really still feel like my coaches were wrong and idiots. But hey, maybe I wasn't good enough. I mean, that's a real reality. And it's very interesting to me. Like, don't forget that in life. I recommend people, I challenge you, when you reflect on your past and you're being honest, like, I guess the question really is, are you being honest? Are you really being honest about what happened? Are you putting blame on other people? Are you trying to make yourself the hero of your own story? I get it, man. Maybe you have to tell yourself whatever you have to tell yourself to deal with the past. But it's hard to admit your shortcomings and hard to admit where you're not good enough. And it's a question maybe you don't want the answer to, but again, I challenge you, try to be honest about the past and reflect on things. Try to admit, like, your shortcomings. It's a hard thing to do. I really struggle with it. I'm not, we talked about Michael Jordan holding people to the same standard. I don't know that I can even hold myself to that standard because it's difficult, especially when you're talking about painful stuff. When you're upset and you're like, man, that hurts. It's easier to say, well, I wasn't really at fault. There's this other third-party thing. But sometimes the right thing to do is to look inward and go, man, I really wasn't good enough. I fell short. And it's hard, but owning that is so important. I just encourage people, when you look on whatever things you're dealing with from your past, whatever hurt, whatever pain, try to look inward and go, man, what could I have done differently? Maybe, some people really are victims of a bad circumstance or victims of bad people around them or this or that. I think of David Carr. David Carr is Derek Carr's older brother. David Carr was drafted to the Houston Texans when they first were made into a franchise, and he never really had a true opportunity to succeed as a quarterback. He had a horrible offensive line, really, really bad. They were just a horrible franchise. He never really got a fair chance. There are people out there like that. But, man, if you can, try to be honest about your past and own whatever shortcomings you had. It's really healthy. It's hard to do. And, man, is it so important.